Hey, welcome in to the Bobby Carpenter Show. We got my man Anthony Schlegel here, and folks, it has arrived. We've got the Week 0 games in the books. We've got the Buckeyes taking on Akron, 3:30 in the shoe this weekend. It is all here for you today. This is what we've been waiting for, Schlegs, the entirety of the offseason. Hopefully you got a good little weekend in and saddled up, watched a little appetizer of college football, if you will, because we know it's going to be coming at you thick and fast here this weekend.
Yeah, just like you like it, Bob. And I would say this. It was great. Again, you and I talked about this. I don't like a big game at noon because I actually took what was a very necessary nap during it because the house was super cold and I was just in a recliner and like out. But then I watched the beginning and I watched the end and I was like, Georgia Tech, I played their absolute face off in that game. And I absolutely love it because run the damn ball, and that's exactly what they did. They won the line of scrimmage. I can't wait to, ask Greg these questions because he's an O-line guy himself. But just the way that they were able to take control of the line of scrimmage, it goes back. Even though we're in 2024 and everybody is throwing the ball and everybody's talking about weapons, controlling the line of scrimmage still matters, Bob.
It always does. And we'll have Geoff Schwartz on.
Jeff, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Played in the NFL for a number of years. His brother Mitchell played with Kansas City, played for the Browns. Both West Coast guys. Jeff now resides in Charlotte, but locked in on college football. Always doing a ton of stuff. So we'll have him here in our second and third segments diving in with us. Very excited to kind of hear what he has to say. Like you said, Schlegs, former offensive lineman. So we'll be able to get into that. Now, probably a little more pressing and more urgent here than that. We'll put a pin in it. We'll get back to that game. Is Michigan received their notice allegations. So what this means is they, I think, have 3 months to respond to the allegations about, the Sharon Moore, the deleted texts, and everything else that happened with the Connor Stallions sign stealing stuff. And so they'll have 3 months to respond to it. And then I think the NCAA then has a month to respond to that to kind of see where everything goes. I'm curious what has all been in the notice of allegations. We've seen some things floating around and moving back and forth, Schleig. So it's been interesting to kind of see what could be in there. I don't know exactly what's in there yet outside of it. People have kind of speculated on some of it, but I'm curious to see where this kind of goes from here.
I actually can't wait to read this and watch the documentary. That's going to be played a lot. They knew when they were making this documentary about Connor Stallions that they're going to get like 6 to 10 million Buckeye fans. They're going to be all over this thing, highly viewed. But I'm not going to speculate what's in it. I'm excited for it to come out. You want to just lay all this out there. Again, not be distracted. Michigan guys, I mean, you want to talk about tall tasks, and I'm not even talking about the coaches. I'm just talking about player. What you're supposed to do, just go in there week in and week out and do your job. But then you also are going to be fielding questions about this. Potentially, like, you just got there and you're playing, like, it's out of your control. So how do those guys stay focused? Because, again, as a coach and as a parent, like, those are the things I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the players that are currently there, not necessarily the coaches and all the other things that transpired. It's going to be very difficult for them this season.
It will. They're going to have a lot of stuff going on. And that's why I talked to Bill Bender on my radio show here today. And he has actually watched the Connor Stallions, the Michigan documentary. He goes, I don't want to speak too much to it because it was, private showing. And, but he goes, it was much more impartial. He goes, a lot of times those are always told from the side of the storyteller. Mm-hmm. And they're going to obviously give you their biased opinion. And there really isn't much of a pushback on the other side of it, where this, he said, he goes, it gives you both sides. He goes, there's a lot in here. I thought it would be much more of a pro-Michigan propaganda piece. It was not. So pretty excited to kind of see that. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be out. I'll have to go check on that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be swirling. And Bill also said, he goes, if the punishments aren't too severe, I could see Michigan just potentially accepting them because of doing that, Schlegs. That will help them then move on. Like, if not, this is going to dominate 2 full seasons already. Do you really want it to start bleeding to a third? Do you want to get caught up in court stuff? There's all kinds of different things. And this is also Sharon Moore. Remember, he was part of Jim Harbaugh in the recruiting deal that we talked about earlier. in the punishment that was handed down. Now, this would be his second potential level 2 violation, so I'm not sure what the suspension or how all of that potentially looks right now either, because that's a whole nother element that they've got to tie in.
Yeah, and it really, you have that element, and then also you have the number one thing that everybody likes to talk about, which is crazy, but it's necessary, is recruiting. So to your point, Bob, the faster that you can get the punishments out of the way and accept them and not necessarily fight them allows you to move forward in the recruiting process. That way, nobody speculates, why do you want to go there? Like, they don't even know what the punishment's going to be. It could be 2 years before you even able to play for a national championship or go to a bowl game or go to the CFP. Like, you don't want that stuff hanging on there. Better to know it and then have your value prop to combat that to help get guys in recruiting.
Yeah. So that's, like you said, the recruiting, just the donors, the NIL, all of those things are going to be hovering kind of omnipresent around all of this right now. So that's one thing that they're going to have to figure out how that looks, what they want to do, what the potential punishment could be, what all is in that notice of allegations.
Yeah.
Because we still, like, as far as to my knowledge, it has not been made public. I was looking around for it this weekend. I know there's people have speculated things in there all the way, Schleichs, from even potentially accusing them of like hacking into the practice footage. So if that's in there, there's other stuff. I don't know how severe those consequences could be, but eventually, like at some point, you want to put a bow on it and move on. They're not going to take away the national championship. Really, what they'll probably end up doing, Schleichs, is just throw a scarlet letter on them and say, hey, I know this stinks, but this is the way that it is right now. It's tough luck. We'll suspend the coach. We'll do a little bit of that, do a little bit of this, and try to figure it out from there. But outside of that, I don't see anything of significance happening.
Yeah, me neither.
Now, you had talked earlier and opened this up. You know, we did have a couple of college football games, not a ton of consequence, but we had that Florida State Georgia Tech game that was over in Ireland. Our guy AJ was over there with Pat McAfee doing the show. Was hammering down Guinness, having an awesome time. Had little newsboy hats on. You know, they felt really good about how that was looking. So you had that, and then also we had SMU, who I thought was going to blow out Nevada, huge favorites. That was a much closer game and had to have a big comeback in the fourth quarter by SMU to get the win. But I want to focus on that Florida State Georgia Tech game. We'll talk to Geoff Schwartz about that coming up here next. But, I mean, like you said, it was all about running the football. And Pete Thamel said during game day earlier that day that he thought Georgia Tech might have the best, or Florida State might have the best defensive line in college football.
Right.
After watching that game, there was one team that I thought dominated the trenches on both sides, the box play, if you will. Yep. And that was Georgia Tech. The Ramblin' Wreck got it done. And so they even had a dude that looks like you. I don't even know if we can find that picture of my man, number 44. I don't know his name. I don't really
Kyle Eford, because I looked him up. Kyle Eford, number 44, 10 tackles in the game. And here's what I did notice in the game.
Big neck roll. You noticed his neck roll.
Huge neck roll. No tats. I mean, I thought that I had the barbed wire tat and I had like a Celtic tat with the super schlegs, underneath, right? But first off, they ran for 190 yards on Florida State. Second, Florida State did not get over 100 yards rushing. So in a game, and their kicker really bailed them out, kicked a 52-yarder and a 59-yarder to go into half 14-14. Really kind of bailed them out of there because they were not able to vertically push the ball. And so when they can't do that, what are you going to do, man? We're going to stop the run because this is all they got. So it allows your linebackers and your D linemen to tee off, say, hey, man, they got one thing going for them right now. It's going to be have to run the football, and you can do it. And I love it when Kyle was able to come up there. Like, there was one run, big gap, boom, he filled it and stuffed them, knocked them back. I was like, I like that dude. And that's exactly why he wears the neck roll, because he stuck his face in a dude's sternum. We really don't teach that anymore. It's always, hey, backside hip, gator roll. No, he was thumping. I really enjoyed watching him play. I really enjoyed the team that is Georgia Tech play, because when I watch games, I'm looking at players and I'm looking at the team, the culture, and it was fun to watch that game.
It was. And DJ didn't have a terrible day, 19 to 27, about 200 yards, no interceptions, no touchdowns, very nondescript. I think they were hoping that he would be a bigger impact than that. Now, he did pick up some first downs on some short yardage stuff, but really wasn't an impact in the running game either. So I'm looking at this like DJ was like, okay, you came in there. They brought in, I don't know, I want to say 20 some, 30 some transfers, but Haynes King, I thought definitely outplayed him. Now, maybe he's not the passing threat, but he did complete some big balls, 11 of 16, 146 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but he let his legs do the talking. He ran, he was able to run 15 times for 54 yards, move the chains, had some big scrambles, and they just really bullied him up front. And that to me, Schlegels, was probably the most impressive thing. So Florida State, like if you're Mike Norvell, you're not out of this.
No.
By any stretch. But you have to have some serious soul searching about what type of team that you have and how you're going to be able to play and move forward. Because if they go play like that, I'm not sure who they're going to beat. I really am not. Like, as far as good teams, because I think Georgia Tech might be better than we thought, but I still don't believe that we're looking at this Ramblin' Wreck squad thinking that this is a team that could go challenge or compete for a national championship or anything like that. That's not in their selection set. If they win eight or 9 games, it's a huge win for them. So we got Geoff Schwartz coming up next. We're going to get to a chance to dive in with him. He'll break this whole thing down for us, talk about that and some upcoming games this week, some betting lines, and everything will be out there for us, Schlegs. Stay tuned here, locked in on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, back here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Now we're pleased to be welcomed by my guy, Geoff Schwartz. Geoff Schlegs, we had ourselves a little week 0 action in college football. Hope you sat there, locked in, and watched it. Was it as good as you expected, and what the heck is going on with the Seminoles?
Well, it's football. I mean, it's not the best of football, but it's nonetheless football, right? I mean, the SMU game was pretty ugly for a while. You know, New Mexico, Montana State, good comeback there by the Bobcats. Montana State Bobcats came back there late. But obviously, the big one was the Florida State game. It looked to me like a couple of things, right? One is that Florida State lost a lot of talent to the NFL. I think that we are forgetting that matters early in a season. They lost their quarterback, their running backs, their wide receiver, some offensive linemen, some 2 pass rushers. As we know, like they lost a lot on defense. To me, a lot all over the team. So that to replace those guys via recruiting, via high school, via portal, all those things, right? And then Georgia Tech had a bunch of returning players, especially in the offensive line and quarterback and skill position players. And that showed up in this game, right? You had a team that was sort of looking offensively in Florida State to figure things out with a quarterback that I think is limited throwing the ball vertically down the field. I watched every snap at Oregon State last season. He can't push the ball down the field as well as Jordan Travis could. And then on the flip side, you had a Florida State defensive line and defense that had to replace a bunch of guys against a veteran offensive line. There were guys, it wasn't just physically they were dominating. They were out of gaps. They weren't in the right place. Like they were not prepared to face sort of this triple option, veer, whatever you want to call Georgia Tech was running. Florida State had one offensive possession in the final 21 minutes of this game. It was controlled by Georgia Tech. So I think all those things are the reason why Florida State lost. And I just look, DJU, he is what he is at this point of his career. And you don't have a vertical passing game with him. That limits what you can be offensively when you can't push the ball down the field. And we saw Florida State unable to generate a lot of explosive plays. And I think that was a big problem for them. They only allowed 24 points. Most college football games, you allow 24 points, you're a top 10 team, you're going to win.
Yeah, it was kind of an old school slugfest, Schwartzy. And like I thought that Florida State would rather put something together in the second half. And you mentioned DJ not being able to push the ball down the field, which is true. And I think that, we looked at it at Clemson and we're like, well, maybe it's the offense, maybe it's the offensive line. They didn't really ask him to do it quite as much, obviously, at Oregon State. Now he comes back to Florida State. And the one thing for a guy that's as big as he is and really a pretty darn good athlete, are you surprised that they don't try to integrate him more into the running game?
he's never wanted to do that, though. That's not been the type of quarterback he's been. He has not wanted to run the football. And even when you saw him run the football, he wasn't aggressively. It's not like an aggressive runner of the football. Some quarterbacks just don't want to do that. That's not who he is as a quarterback. So you can include that on 3rd and 2, 4th and 2. But even Oregon State, who the year before he got there, they had the hammer. What was his name? He played fullback, tight end, Jack Coletto. And 4th down, he would come in on 4th and 2, and they would convert nearly every 4th down with him as the quarterback. They run the power plays and the inside zone, outside zone with him, the sweep plays. And they thought DJU was going to be that guy. He wasn't in that offense last season. That's not what he is. And so to put that on him, it's just not what he is as a quarterback. We do this thing in the sport. In the NFL, this happens way more often than college football. There's more years in the NFL where we look at a guy and think, okay, we have so much film on him, but he'll be different in my offense. He'll be different in what I do, And we have 3 years of film on DJ, really 3.5 years of film on DJ. He is what he is at this point. Yeah, so every now and then you get a Bo Nix, right? Who was not good at Auburn, comes to Oregon, it works out perfectly. But a lot of times you just get what you get. That is what, and so DJU is what he is. He's not a bad quarterback, but I don't think he's elite enough at times to win games like that. I mean, he missed a wide open guy, the play action pass, perfectly set up, just flat out missed him, which is a throw you expect someone of his caliber to make.
Hey, Schwartz, first off, being the beefy lineman, which I like underneath, follow him on X at Geoff Schwartz, right? Perfect. Beefy lineman, parentheses.
Yeah.
How awesome was it to see Coach Key talk about just run the ball in today's day and age when it's, we're passing in the flashiness, 5 stars and quarterbacks and wide receivers. Ultimately, it always comes back to the line of scrimmage and the fundamentals of the game.
Well, he's an offensive line coach, that was always gonna be the case, and that's why I thought they'd be able to compete in this game at least early on. I thought early on they'd play well, and Florida State's depth would take over time. Look, they kind of had him in a blender, man. Florida State did not know where the ball was going. They didn't have those reads, and look, you guys can maybe speak more to this, but it's hard to face an offense like Georgia Tech without having practiced against an offense like that. It's why playing the service academies are so hard because you just don't see that very often, right? But eventually in those games, the talent takes over, right? Eventually you figure it out, and the talent of Florida State is supposed to take over against Georgia Tech, but they couldn't get off the field, man. They just couldn't do it. And it was just 4 yards, 5 yards, 3 yards, 7 yards, just sort of kind of just bled them to death at the end there. And it's a really great win for Georgia Tech. They're now 5-0 under Brent Key against ranked opponents. But they lose to the MAC team they play. So they have to figure that part out.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. We're talking to Geoff Schwartz here. You can see him on Fox, on Sirius XM, NFL, all the stuff around there during football season. Does a great job breaking it down for you. I don't know if you got a chance to check out the SMU Nevada game. I was incredibly high, Jeff, on SMU coming in this year. And after Florida State lost, I said, hey, maybe this is a team that could slide into the ACC championship. They've got a very manageable schedule. They play Florida State now at home. And after watching Florida State, I don't think that they're world beaters. I was surprised that they looked as human as they did and then needed that big comeback in the fourth quarter to be able to get it, to be able to get a win.
Yeah, I didn't like their game plan, honestly. Just run the ball right in Nevada. They were just trying to trick them too much and run sideways and just run at them. You have a good offensive line. Just go right at Nevada. And they just didn't. The first play of the game, deep play action pass intercepted, and just sort of never got on a rhythm until it mattered the most at the very end. I think sometimes, look, Bobby, I felt this way for a while now when you play with some offensive coaches. If you give them a lot of time to game plan for something, they get way too cute. Some offensive coaches are better giving them 1 week to prepare than 6 months to prepare, because in 1 week they're going to do what they know works best. When you have these coaches, I felt this way in bowl games. The coaches they're so bored. They just come up with a bunch of crap, and it's just this is not going to work. Why are we doing this? So I think the SMU offense will be better. Now doesn't have a month to prepare for a game. Just get in their normal rhythm, get back to what they do best. And that's what it felt like in their offense. They didn't really have a rhythm and a purpose on what their goal was. And maybe, I don't know who they play next week, but maybe their goal was we're not going to show very much and we're going to beat them easily. So we're going to pare things down. But it didn't feel that way. They just sort of had no rhythm on offense. They played fine on defense, I thought.
Hey, Schwartz, I want to say this. You're offensive lineman. And, one about the SMU game. Now, RJ Maryland, that's a really good tight end. But I want to ask you this question because it's something that I feel very adamantly about is you have to know your personnel, just like you're talking about the offense. Yeah. You have to know your personnel and allow them to play fast because too many times we hear people, man, they're not physical at the point of attack. You're an O-lineman, played at Oregon, played in the league for 8 years. What's your favorite, gap or zone?
Oh, I like gap.
Explain why, because people don't understand what that is.
I made a mistake. I meant to say zone. I'll tell you why. Mostly because I'm terrible at pulling. Like front side of a gap run, I'm fine. Deuce block, but the pulling, I'm too big. I'm too tall.
Well, yeah,
it's not great. Zone, man, you just get on a track and go. You just run. So I was better at that. Now double teams I was fine with. Down blocks was fine. But the pulling part of it, I was terrible at pulling. Just because I was just too high. I just pop up as I pulled and pull around, and then you have to sort of like guess. Are you going inside the block or outside the block? Is the linebacker spilling you? It's too much guesswork for me. Zone blocking I felt was just easier. Plus, there's more options in zone runs for running backs. And I felt in power plays. There are times when you have to run a downhill gap play. Gap play, by the way, any sort of pull power play, right? Will you pull one guard from the backside to the front side? Front side pull is not the gap play. Now duo, right, is the big gap play, double team everywhere, counter, stutters, things like that, or trap and wham and whack, all those are gap plays. There's a purpose for them, but I just always like zone. I would play in offenses that ran a ton of zone with zone runners. So I've always enjoyed that. But parts of front side double teams, I'm fine with. I just hated pulling. I was just very bad at it.
Well, we don't want to make you do any more things that you hate, Geoff. I'm glad you can put that away. Was your brother Mitchell? I mean, is he a better puller than you? Is that something?
No. Oh no, I think he was even worse. So he was a pass blocking extraordinaire. That was his thing. The year they won the Super Bowl in 2019, PFF had him down for something like 140 pass protection snaps in the postseason. He gave up one pressure. So his deal was his deal. He's a great pass protector. 4-time All-Pro, but no, you would never. He didn't play guard, and you would never pull. I don't think he pulled once. He's just not. That's not what he's good at.
I love it. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. We got more with Geoff Schwartz. We're gonna break down some of the games that are coming up this Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The whole slate coming up on this Labor Day weekend here after this on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Well, how do they know I'm doing this? Did somebody leak this out?
It's social media.
Oh.
That's the way social media works now.
I thought maybe you were just running that yap.
Welcome to Big Play, a sports media team that started back in 2014, and now we're not in a garage. Look at us, incorporating some of Cleveland's favorite sports personalities, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland. Coming to you live from the shores of Lake Erie and Burke Lakefront Airport, join Team Big Play for all the best sports talk in Ohio. Check us out on social media at Big Play, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland.
Anthony Schlegel, just how physical he was. I saw the girth and the power and everything he was bringing to the table, especially when he was a nice beefy 255 playing middle linebacker. All right, welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. We're here with my guy, Mr. Geoff Schwartz, talking and breaking down everything college football. Talked a little bit about what went on last week. We got some stuff coming up this week. Appreciate it if you're watching on Bally's. Fantastic. Watching on YouTube, please subscribe, leave your comments so we can get your questions answered. Geoff, pretty exciting upcoming week. I know we have like 21 games on Thursday night, which used to be reserved for like some good games. Now it's just everybody throwing it in there. But a nice slate of games on Saturday, and really another huge one for the ACC as Clemson's taking on Georgia on Saturday. I believe that's in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Dome. If Clemson loses, and they're almost a 2-touchdown dog at this point, I mean, are we basically saying goodbye to the ACC being a 2-bid league?
Well, I put out my playoff on social media, which, by the way, everyone agreed with. It was great to see that when I put out my 12-team playoff, there was not a disagreement anywhere. It just was hundreds of replies of like, Schwartz, you did a good job. I agree with what you said. It's funny enough, I didn't have Florida State in my playoff, and they haven't sent any tweets lately at me. I had one ACC team. I had Miami is winning the ACC. So it would not surprise me if there were one big league. Look, the sport is moving towards two power conferences, right? The Big Ten and the SEC. I think they're going to lean into that when it comes to playoff time. And so if Clemson loses this game, which I think they're going to lose, they'll be the kind of one strike against Clemson, right? Can't beat Georgia. And so I think Clemson, look, Clemson is refusing to participate in roster building in a way that is done in 2024. You can still win games building up your team via high school recruiting. It's just a little bit harder. And you end up playing unknown guys. You end up playing guys that you kind of get tied to that might not be good enough. And so I just don't know if their team is as good as Miami or Florida State, or obviously as Georgia. I think Georgia probably handles this game and covers the spread. I got to see more offensively from Clemson. So I thought last year they hired the guy from TCU, right, as their OC. I figured they would be a little bit better offensively. They just sort of have their moments where they go into lulls. Georgia is really good. I think Georgia, it's a home game for them essentially, even though Clemson is not that far from Atlanta. But I think Georgia takes this one down.
Yeah, I mean, really, that game, right? Carson Beck versus Cade Klubnik. I mean, like, it's all about the quarterbacks anyway, Klubnik. And I like that you said that about Clemson, because we've actually seen Ohio State and you, Oregon grad, have seen teams go through the portal and be very selective. When you're at that top tier, you can still build a roster and do it the right way with the right guys. Because even if you are building up to your point of it takes a lot more to develop them over time, you can still selectively do it. You're still paying those guys NIL money when they get recruited. Why not go out there and get some other ones?
I agree. I don't know why. Remember at one point Dabo said something like, I'm not going to participate in the sport once players get paid. Like it's just, he just has this gripe against it. I don't know why, to be honest with you. I don't know why he doesn't sort of embrace what the sport is now. You don't have to bring in 45 portal players, just 10, 12. I mean, you can sort of find a way to do this without going over the top. And it feels like Dabo just said, we're not going to participate in all. Like, we're just not going to do it. And I mean, it is what it is, but I think that kind of puts Clemson behind when it comes to roster building.
Got a pretty nice slate of games this weekend, Jeff. I mean, we start talking about Notre Dame and A&M. Obviously, the Georgia Clemson we brought up, Penn State at West Virginia, which I think is kind of a little underrated game. LSU taking on USC at night. I mean, there's a ton of great stuff. Is there a game maybe that you're looking at that you think is going to be maybe more compelling, or that the outcome isn't what everyone else thinks it is after your evaluation?
Well, I think that LSU-USC is going to be a big game for both programs, right? They're sort of in the same boat. They lose their Heisman quarterbacks. They're rebuilding their defense. LSU a little bit, they're complaining about the talent, right? They're kind of without the talent they need to win on defense. We'll find out. New coordinators in both places. But the one factor of this game that leads me to believe LSU is going to win is LSU's offensive line is entering the year the best in the country. It's a fantastic offensive line. And USC is better coaching staff on defense, but do they have better players? Like, do they have, if you look at their defensive lineup, right? How many pros do they have on that defense? I don't think they have a ton. I don't think they have a lot. So I think they're still going to struggle on defense. And LSU, flip side, you give Riley all this time, Miller, Moss. I'm curious to see how the offense, if it looks sort of, more in rhythm. Last year it wasn't rhythm. It wasn't Caleb Williams' fault per se, because the defense stunk. He tried to make too many plays, but doesn't look more in rhythm. And look, the other game that I think is just so fascinating, just for narratives for what we do, is the Colorado game. I think Colorado wins. If they don't, if they don't, it's going to be a long weekend for the Colorado program. Again, I think they win, but that game to me, just like for what we do, I'm on the radio Friday morning. Okay.
Right.
I'm staying up till that game is over, because if they lose that game, our show is written for us already, right? Like it is ready to go. So I think that's just a fun game for sort of narratives. Otherwise, look, it's week one, right? There's a lot of I think people trying to figure out who their teams are. There's a lot of transfer portal players. There's some good teams, Akron, Ohio State, Oregon, Idaho, so who knows? Utah's playing Southern Utah. I mean, there's some top tier teams playing nobodies, where a lot of backups are going to play. So, it's sort of a mixed bag of some of these important games and some of the games that feel like tune-up games.
Yeah, I want to ask you this question. So we got another big one. I would say big one, but it's Penn State going on the road to West Virginia. I think West Virginia is actually going to be better than people think they are. That's another one. My question really is, in all your experience, in all the games, did you know that your team was ready to go week one from year to year? Because now college football is more NFL-esque, because rosters are always changing. You go from 90 to 75 down to the cuts. Now they got 70 total with the practice squad guys. You knew you had teams that were ready to go week one versus teams that weren't ready to go week one. What were some of those things that you looked for in those teams that like, hey, we're ready to go week one versus I don't really know where we are right now?
Well, I think it comes down to just sort of confidence, right? And how well camp went. I mean, I knew in 2007, we had Chip Kelly our first year. We were ready to go, man. I mean, we were rolling out of camp. And there were times in the NFL where I won't name who the quarterbacks were, but you end camp, you're like, this is going to be a bad season. Right? You just his players, his players. And so look, but of course you can convince yourself things are going to be good. You have to convince yourself things are going to be good. Otherwise you're going to not enjoy playing. It's hard to play anyways. And you have to believe you're going to be good to go out there and give your full effort. But you sort of know sometimes, but there is a hope that if camp didn't go well, Cade McNamara at Iowa, supposedly it's not going very well. You get into a game and things settle down a little bit. I mean, look, I don't know about you guys. I was a much better game player than practice player. If you sort of get what I mean, like I just played better in games. I just always did. I did in practice. I felt like things slowed down for me in games, and just, sort of was able to see everything much cleaner than a practice. And you're it's hot, you're miserable, 14th day of camp versus just a game. You're feeling fresh, you're feeling good, you're vibing in the offense. So some guys are gamers. So this is what this weekend's for a lot of teams, right? Sort of figuring out where they're after week one.
So I always forget, Geoff, that you were up there at Oregon with Chip, and everybody's been excited. I've got a chance to see this offense through training camp, and I think everybody's super juiced to see what it can be with just the talent around it and what Chip likes to do. Being a guy that played for him in that offensive line, which it's really an offensive line driven offense with everything he does. And he does like to pull a lot of guys, Geoff. So maybe you weren't a fan of his. They do a decent amount of gap scheme running.
We didn't do that when I was there. Yeah.
Yeah. What can we expect from that offense, from the run game element with the Chip Kelly offense?
Well, Chip Kelly's run game is very multiple, and he will tailor to the personnel that he has at hand. So if you're a team that, UCLA was a 13 personnel team, right?
Yeah.
One wide receiver, 3 tight ends. If you don't have that, you'll be an 11 personnel run team. Like, he will tailor the run game to what you have. The question I have with Ohio State's offense is not the run game. Chip Kelly's going to have that down. It's how do you pair Chip Kelly's run game with Ryan Day's passing game, right? Because they're really different. Like, Chip Kelly's it's not a downfield passing attack. It's not the ball can get downfield, but it's more set up from the run, right? You're formationally set up to run the football first. If you're a passing team, a lot of times you're set up to pass the ball first, and you design your runs off that. So how do you pair those two things together to maximize the wide receiver talent you have on the team? Look, I mean, Jeremiah Smith, supposedly Bobby is incredible. I mean, I know people that have bet on him to win the Blitnikoff as a true freshman, sprinkle some Heisman money on there, but in this offense, like, are they going to throw him the ball enough? I mean, it's just what Chip has over the years. It's a run first offense. So I'm curious. I want to watch it. I want to see how they play against Akron. I mean, 50.5 favorites. I would imagine lots of points are scored. So it'd be fun to watch.
Absolutely. Well, Geoff, we appreciate the time. We'd love to do it again because
That sounds good.
forget you tied in with Chip Kelly.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that'd be absolutely tremendous. Geoff Schwartz, 8-year NFL veteran. You can see and hear him on SiriusXM Radio, SiriusXM NFL, and across Fox as well. So thank you for that, Geoff. And coming up, we got our headlines. We'll break down everything that's going on today in Ohio State. There we go. Up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Bobby Carpenter. I want to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Affinity Whole Health, the leaders in the testosterone replacement industry. I've been on a testosterone replacement program for a few years right now, and I've got to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer. Affinity Whole Health has allowed me to be the best version of myself, both mentally and physically. I loved how easy it was to get started. I booked my free consultation, met with my prescriber, checked my numbers, and Affinity Whole Health designed a program that was customized to fit my needs. So I'm telling you guys, if you have low energy, you want to get rid of that spare tire around the waist or take it to the next level in the bedroom, Affinity Whole Health is the place to get started. So don't wait any longer. 5 minutes of your time, book your free consultation. You're going to love the way you feel. All right, welcome back into the show. I want to tell you about my friends over Affinity Whole Health. They're sponsoring headlines here. At Affinity Whole Health, they offer personalized treatment plans for people to help them feel better. Whether you're struggling with weight loss, low energy, sleep loss, muscle loss, all these different things, they can help you with all of it. Affinity Whole Health provides expert guidance to help you support and safely reach your health goals. They've got all of Ohio covered. They've got places in Columbus, Cleveland, also in Indy and Chicago. They're everywhere. Don't wait any longer. I've been a patient there for 7 years. So go check them out by going to affinitywholehealth.com. That's affinitywholehealth.com. Now, Schleggs, we're going to get into our headlines. And one of the things that came out last week, we didn't get a chance to get to it. ESPN put out their 2025 mock draft for Buckeyes. Now, I believe they had 4 Buckeyes going in the first round. And it's a little bit of a grab bag because they've got a couple offense, couple offense, couple defense. And we'll see if that ends up holding true. It's always good to be kind of rated early on in the year. A big part of it. But Denzel Burke, first off the board, they have at number 15, the corner for Ohio State. They've got him going to Jacksonville. But Denzel Burke, I think everybody looked at him, Schleggs, when he got here. Huge freshman year, destined to be a first rounder. A little bit of a slump as a sophomore, injured, stepped up big last year, close to being a first rounder, maybe could have got in. And now I think this year, if he plays well, he's going to be one of the top 2 or 3 corners off the board.
Yeah, and he's back. And I even put this in there. So I'm walking, again, this is why guys come back. We've talked about this, Bob, on this show. NIL is a part of the pie. I believe that the majority of that pie, they came back for their teammates, their coaches, to beat that team up north and win a national championship. The other thing that this does is it allows you to get 1 more year development to improve your draft stock while also being able to make income. That's good. And the guys that you mentioned on there, so you got Denzel, JT, Emeka, Donnie, right? I think there's other guys that can actually play their way into that first round because our senior year, we had 5. We were talking about, was it last year? Somebody got Michigan. Somebody had 6, right? There's a couple teams that had 6.
Yeah.
I think we could potentially have that when guys have big years simply for the fact that like their genetics and like how that could potentially translate to the next level. I love Denzel Burke though, by the way.
Absolutely. So then they have 17. They have JT Tuimoloau coming off the edge, defensive end, big beefy dude, number 1 defensive.
Twitchy, man.
Yeah.
Twitchy. I mean, he's twitchy, man, and he is a competitor. And you know what though, Bob? Like he's a guy. I'm gonna give you guys he's a guy that having a great season could jump into the top 10. And I say this because of this. All he has to do is be more consistent.
Yeah.
Because we've seen the flashes. You go out there and have a Bosa type year, which I know is in his wheelhouse because he has the skill set and the genetic potential. he's going to be that type of guy.
Yeah, I think you know that it's in there. You mentioned his frame, his physicality, his twitchiness, his ability to move. You know, the one thing I've talked to people, they're just waiting that consistency. Like, will the production line up with the traits? That's the question that a lot of people have had about him, and it's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. You know, we had that Penn State game, which was unbelievable. Last year had 5 sacks, 32 pressures. You know, can he grow that? Can he be a double-digit sack guy? Can he be a TFL guy? Can he put that production on the board? After that, at 25, the Cincinnati Bengals, they have Emeka Egbuka. T. Higgins is most likely going to be gone. Cincinnati drafted him, I'm guessing, towards the back half, bottom of the first round. Emeka fits in perfectly. He's a slot. He can play outside. He's a phenomenal human being, great leader. And we'll get into some of the stuff that those guys were getting into over the weekend, Schlegs, and just the phenomenal young men we have at Ohio State. But Emeka Egbuka is sitting there at 25.
Love that one. I mean, honestly, I hope he goes there. For Joe Burrow's sake, the state of Ohio, I hope he goes to Cincy.
For Joe Burrow's sake, I do too. It'd be fantastic. And then lastly, the last guy they have, an offensive lineman, Donovan Jackson, the left guard for Ohio State. All right. I had to try to figure out which side he was on. The left guard there, absolutely. Make the 2 L's. Okay, side. But big physical guy, highly recruited guy, hard worker, great personality, great temperament, like the leader of that offensive line room. Kind of checks all those boxes that you're looking for. And, you know, he's big. He's got a big frame, 6'4", 320. I think could be a little bigger, but moves really well. That leadership element, I think people want to see him maul a little bit this year. And that's where, you know, we started talking earlier in the first segment. You wanted to pound the football. Can they do that? Will they be able to do that? If they can, a big piece of it is going to be Donovan Jackson.
100%. And coming off of last year, it kind of goes back to JT, like more consistency. And Donnie really reminds me, just his makeup, Bob, of Nick Mangold.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, honestly, they wear the same damn number, right? And they are so close to like how they interact. But I'm telling you what, if he can be a little bit smaller, but his football IQ is so high, sometimes you don't necessarily have to do that. But going back to Geoff, what he was talking about, zone blocking, just freaking go and move people and use his strength, because he's a big, strong guy, right? If you start to see that on a consistent basis, he could potentially go higher. But Donnie is a great human. I'm rooting for him. I hope he has great success this year. And they have to have him have a big year on that left side.
Oh, absolutely they do. And he's got to be a big piece of it. He needs to be call it the lighthouse in the storm, the stabilizing factor on that offense. That's what you want to see him be able to do right there on the inside of that offensive line. All right, coming up, we got our headlines. We'll talk we've got our tailgate talk. We'll talk a little bit about that, answer some of your questions, and we'll get a chance to see some of the great things the Ohio State Buckeyes are doing on campus, what they're bringing to light. All that here coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, Schlegs, we got our little headlines coming up now. And this is one question that I feel like we always get a lot of, talking about freshmen that are going to make a big impact this year. And I think everybody knows, Jeremiah Smith, JJ Smith, the world has heard about him. But, going through training camp now, we're kind of seeing how everything's laying out. Do you think there are any freshmen that could have big impacts early, or some guys that maybe later in the season have had good camps and will slowly grow into maybe some bigger roles?
I think James People is somebody that could have a role as a running back, being the third guy. There's going to be a lot of touches between the first two guys because they have to have them, because that's just where they are in their career. But it's great to have that third and fourth options, and Sam Williams-Dixon. So there's those guys. Peyton Pierce, I think is going to be somebody that's going to really benefit us on special teams. And I think that he will bring a physicality at the linebacker spot as well when he gets in. But it's a very deep room and they only run 2. Who else you got, Bob? Who else you thinking?
Yeah, look at that. I like Peyton Pierce, what you're saying, because I think that that's something that definitely there's some attrition going on there. And linebackers are a group that are going to take a pounding. Like they're going to get physically beaten up. So you want to make certain that that group is healthy, that group is fresh. And I know James loves to play a lot of guys. So that's going to be critical. I look at this. I like him. I think Peoples is going to play. I think Sam Williams thinks like those guys, you're going to get some running backs because you only have 2 of them out there right now. So that's another big piece of it. And I think you could probably see some guys sprinkled in the secondary. Not exactly sure who it is. And then I think Julian Sayans is going to get some run this year. Like, not that he's going to be the starter, but I think they're going to get Julian, what you're saying, out there, Schlegs, to see what he can do and let it fly a little bit.
Another one too, he had his black stripe taken off. I really like him, special teams guy, Jalen McClain.
Yeah.
Freshman. I think he could do something. Again, you're going to watch these freshmen. You got to earn the Buckeye leads, man. You got to play special teams. Remember, be a football player first, then we'll get you on the field.
Well, it comes down to the rotations a little bit too. And it's one of the things that Larry Johnson talked about, where he said he's going to have basically 5 first-team defensive tackles and maybe a 6-man rotation. And obviously, Ty Hamilton, Tyleek Williams, like those guys up there, very, very good. You've been championing your guy, K-Mac. McDonald, thinking that he's going to be able to do a good job. What is the right rotation depth? Like, how many guys do you want in there to be able to play to make sure that you're getting guys rested and keeping them healthy, but also making sure the quality and the standard is still where it needs to be?
This is what I told him from the jump, man. Like culture reps. That was something that the seniors brought into Coach Mick. Like, we do culture reps. Well, guess what? If you want these other guys to be able to get reps so you can be fresh at the end of the game, at the end of the year, right? So you can put your best foot forward, make sure they're upholding the standard. That's on you. The right rotation, to me, I hate it. Like, you got to get into a rhythm, especially on linebacker, but D-line plays a little bit different. Depends on the type of style of offense you're going against. But like, because if they're throwing screens all over the place, you got to rotate them a little bit more. That's not what those guys do, right? If they're running the ball, they might stay in a little bit longer. If it's constantly they're behind the 8 ball and now we're just pass rush all the time, it might be a medium pace type rotation. But you're only going to be able to rotate based upon the amount of guys that you have that you trust. That's what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
I can see 5. I can see 5.
I think there are 5, maybe 6 if you can trust them all. But they'll play them all. We'll see a lot of guys here this week against Akron. We'll talk a little bit more about that here after this break on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
They're off in the Kentucky Derby as Authentic takes them around the far turn. Tis the Laws making his move now, and they're into the stretch. These two stride for stride. Authentic, Tis the Law. Here's the wire. Authentic has won the Kentucky Derby.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, Schlegs, as we wrap up the show, we got about a minute left. Just got the season opener coming up. What was maybe one of your most memorable season openers of your football career?
Oh, crap. I mean, I would say probably 2004, running out in the shoe the first time with you guys. That was memorable. My first game ever, man. Freshman year, Air Force Academy, number 3, Oklahoma comes to Colorado, and we get our ass absolutely handed to us, 41 or 44-3. Terrible, but I played.
You played. I mean, how many tackles did you make? Didn't sound
I
like
don't
there was.
even know. I don't know. I mean, I was on special teams. You know, I mean, I was straight out of basic training. Literally, I had like a week till I could eat. I think I weighed like 209 pounds at the time.
Well, we like you better, big and beefy, Schlegs, but you'll be back in big and beefy tomorrow. So stay locked in here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Thanks for tuning in.